Still more questions surrounding Fayette County Public Schools spending. Just hours before it was set to begin, the district canceled this afternoon's Budget and Finance Committee meeting.
It comes as the WKYT Investigates team looked into district dollars used on trips and professional leave and the call for school leaders to identify potential budget cuts. Our Kelsey Soto is live for us looking into the funding for students' education and how that's changed over the years. Good evening, Kelsey.
We want to paint you a picture because we've spent a lot this week talking about spending, but it's important to know where that funding comes from. By now, you're probably aware that Fayette County Schools' total budget is $817 million. 55% of that, or $370 million of it, comes from local taxpayers. 37%, or $248 million of that, comes from the state, and less than 1% comes from the feds. And with most of that money, though, coming from local Fayette County taxpayers and local sources, residents want to know, what are they getting for those dollars?
In academics, it's all about the numbers. According to Fayette County Schools website, using data from 2022 and 2023, they spend $22,529 on each student's education. That's higher than the national average of $15,563. UK economics teacher and researcher Dr. John Guerin reports that FCPS funding per student rose 110% since 1990 when adjusted for inflation. While many celebrate an increase in per-pupil spending, it's an area of concern for Jim Waters with the Bluegrass Institute, who says there should be big bang for those big bucks.
I think if they're going to continue asking for more money from taxpayers, I think taxpayers deserve to know where the dollars are going that they've already invested in this huge system.
There are 3,081 full-time teachers at FCPS. They also employ 2,906 support and administrative staff.
We see right there a little hint about where these dollars are going. It's going to non-teaching personnel. It's going to the bureaucracy. It's going to teachers' aides and to other folks at the central office.
For Jason Bailey,
Kentuckians are very independent-minded.
At the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, he sees progress when it comes to the district's recruiting and retention.
If you look at Fayette County, for example, the average teacher pay has not lost ground compared to what it has in many of our rural parts of the state because they've been able to generate those resources. But those counties that don't have that property wealth just haven't been able to.
Kentucky voters soundly turned down a proposed change to the state's constitution last month, saying no to spending public dollars on private schools.
Fayette County was overwhelmingly against Amendment 2. I think because people like their public schools generally in Fayette County and they think they're pretty good. They could be better with targeted investment and improvement, but that was certainly a place in the state where the voters were very clear.
Waters says the change would have provided an alternative choice.
The tax increases in Fayette County during the pandemic, they did not cease to want to raise taxes and bring in more funding. And yet they didn't even want to give parents a say in what programs are added and what programs are removed. It's a tone deafness that they've had. It's got to change.
Bailey believes the purse strings are cinched in Frankfort. Kentucky budgets more than a third of state funds for K-12 education.
Ultimately, in our Constitution, public education is a state responsibility. The local school board plays a role for sure, but it's ultimately up to the legislature to decide. That's what the court has said. In many schools, the public schools are the only option, and it's also the place you go Friday night for the football game or you go to the band concert. People know the teachers, the custodians, the cafeteria workers in their school, and they didn't want to see resources diverted from them.
Meanwhile, spotted in Lexington, a billboard boasting the district's success. Yet state data shows in 2023, nearly half or more of FCPS students failed to attain proficiency on state testing in grades 4 and 8 reading and math.
We're failing our kids. We're failing our next generation of students. So we have to do better. So what are you going to do with the resources you have? You have plenty of resources. The problem here is not the funding, it's the system. That's the problem.
Now, as for that Budget and Planning Committee meeting that was scheduled for 3 o'clock this afternoon at the Fayette County Board of Education behind me, we were notified at 1 o'clock via email that that had been canceled and rescheduled until January 7th of the new year. We know by then that we'll have 2 new board members taking their seats and it will kick off the legislative session. If you have something you'd like us to look into, send us an email at investigates@wkyt.com. Live in Lexington, Kelsey Soto for WKYT Investigates.